And if it is that we do not stop this thing that is going on there, we are going to have that problem where you will have people with money in this country, but they will just not invest because they do not want to be targets. We will have a system like the Sicilian Mafia in this country if we do not address this crime business. People will need to do something. But if this crime situation is not addressed, what we're going to have is the formation of La Casa Nostra in this country. You're going to have groups like the Sicilian Mafia in this country. You will be in a situation where when you have a business, you will have to pay thugs every month. And if not, if you do not pay them, they will shoot you, they will kill you. This is what is happening in countries where the government and the people and parents fail to regularize, discipline, and train their people properly. We have in this country a situation. We have in this country a situation where people are just, just shifting blame. Shifting blame for crime in this country. That's what we have. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is if it is that you're going to continue with that thing in this country, what you're going to have is you're going to have La Cosa Nostra. La Cosa Nostra will be the order of the day in this country. But before I go further, let me talk to you about how the Sicilian Mafia started. And you will see some parallels with what is happening in St Lucia right now. All right. In the 19th century, 18 something, you had the feudal system in Sicily was being dismantled. So feudalism is a system where you had certain fellas on top. You had leaders, and under them had sub bosses and all of that ruling the country. And then you had serfs. I forgot the whole thing. I looked at it a long time ago. But you had people at the bottom almost like slaves. And when the feudalism system was destroyed, was dismantled, they were trying to bring in capitalism. So at around 1812, when they were really at the height of dismantling the feudal system and bringing in capitalism, what we had was the big guys. They were losing their lands, or they were selling out their lands, and so more private people started owning lands. Now when the big guys on top owned these large expanses of land, they had their private armies. They had their private armies to protect their land, to protect their property, to protect their family and their resources. But when feudalism was dismantled and they ushered in capitalism, we had a situation where the private owners, the small people who started owning lands, they were not able to afford private armies to protect their lands. And the government system that they had, the police system, was not really reliable. There were not enough of them, and they were not coming often to see after the disputes that people had. Now, there were lands in the time when the feudalism was at its peak. There were lands that were, they call these things commons, these lands commons. These were like lands that the poor people could have gone eat, take a fruit or take some food from it without being charged or anything like that. These were common lands for the poor people could have had access to these lands. So when feudalism was dismantled, there were very few common lands. You had more private ownership of lands. And so where the place where the poor people could have come and taken some fruit or some food, these things were not available anymore. So there was more hunger in these places and there was more theft as a result. So imagine you're moving from feudalism to a democratic society to capitalism, and what you had was a system where there were no common lands, and so what happened was the private land owners, they were now at the mercy of bandits. So private owners, remember they did not have the money to pay for armies to protect them and to protect their family and their property. And now there are more thieves now because there were no common land available. More thieves now come in and take things from your property, and you are just a small mile away private landowner. So when the private landowners, the small mile away fellows who just started having land, when they realized what was happening, they started coming together to form groups to protect their interests because they did not have money to protect their property. They did not have money to support armies, private security and things like that. So what they did was, if I have my property, my vibe, I would tag up with another person, another partner of mine that have his private land also, because these fellas never used to have land, so they don't have money to pay for security. So we would tag me, my partner, my cousin, another friend of mine. We have property, so we would come together and we would provide security. We would have common security. Our people, our workers, our family would protect ourselves. But what happened is this thing became they became more greedy and more ambitious and more diabolical with that thing, where they started taking advantage of people. And sometimes, like if you have a business or some other property, this group of fellows who tag together to protect themselves, they're now starting to intimidate you and tell you, hey, if you want protection, you have to pay me X amount of money every month. And if you're not paying them, they themselves going to violate you. So this is really what the origin of that mafia thing was, in a nutshell. And so some of these fellas became very powerful and they became very wealthy by collecting money from extortion and also by intimidating other public officials. They became very rich, very powerful. And you also, when those guys became powerful in Sicily, some of them moved to the United States. They moved places like New York, Chicago, and Miami and those places. In the end, what happened? They brought in the same La Cosa Nostra thing into America. And that's how you get fellas like John Gotti and all of them other fellas that you're hearing about. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm seeing some parallels with that kind of vibe and what's happening in this country, St Lucia. Because when the feudalism was dismantled and fellas started having private properties, there was more theft because there were no more common lands for the poor people to feed from. There was more theft taking place. There was more killings taking place. There were more hired killing taking place. And I'm seeing parallels in this country. I'm seeing it is almost like, just go and check it out for yourself. Go and read La Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian Mafia, how it started. I'm just giving you a brief synopsis of the whole vibe. But when you look at this thing, La Cosa Nostra, you're seeing parallels to what's happening in St. Lucia. And what I'm trying to tell you is the crime situation that we have here now, people are just trying to they're passing blame. They're portioning blame. They're very good at that in this country. Instead of addressing the problem head on. Instead of addressing the problem, they apportion blame. But if it is that this blame thing is going to continue, what is going to happen is we are going to lose this country. The first thing we're going to lose is the tourism industry that you people value so much. Because when people notice them kind of petty crime happening in this country and they hear every time bad news about St. Lucia, it is going to bring a situation where people will not want to come to this place. And this is something that everybody know about. We have a lot of people, hustlers, depending on the tourists and other vibes to survive. A lot of these people will not be able to eat. But the origin of all of those things is the crime situation is getting to be very high in this country. The parents, who some of them are the ones who actually enable these crimes, they point their hands at the government and everybody else except themselves. And St. Lucia is a very reactive country. When something happens, there is always a reaction, a lot of talk, a whole heap of talk. And then just give them 2 weeks and everybody forget about it until the event happens again. So I'm telling you people, if it is that people cannot take the bull by the horn and deal with the crime situation, the useless murders that you have in this country, if you cannot deal with this petty theft you have here, in broad daylight, in high noon, you have little boys jumping on businessmen counters with guns, taking people's money. If you can't stop these things from happening, what you're going to encourage is, you're going to encourage the formation of La Cosa Nostra in this country. You're going to cause organizations like the Sicilian Mafia to develop and proliferate in this country. And you people who are guilty of just talking and doing nothing about the situation, when you lose some of your, like some of the politicians, when you lose your political power, when you're getting older, the young people will come to your home. You will not be able to sit down in your balcony. The bullets will reach you in your balcony. When you're sitting down drinking your coffee or whatever you people drink, you all think it will be peace and safety. But you see the things that you're deliberately allowing to happen in this country, when you all sit down in your balconies, the same bullets that were hitting the poor people children, it will hit you all in your balconies. And these parents, these hypocritical parents, these lying mothers, who all along know what is going on, these lying mothers, who you've seen 5 laptops in your house, 6 laptops new, and you know that your son does not own a computer store, but you say nothing. When you clean the house, sometimes you find guns, you say nothing. And when there is a calamity, when there is an unfortunate circumstance and development, you start screaming, crying, coming on television and saying that your child, he was a good boy. He was a good boy and he had 20 new laptops in your house with all the nylon, the foams on it. He was a good boy when you're cleaning the room, you find an unregistered firearm in his house, but you're hiding all of those things. These hypocritical mothers, these enablers, these people are going to change St. Lucia from what it is now. You call St. Lucia simply beautiful. St. Lucia will become simply Cosa Nostra if these people continue doing these things that they're doing in this country. There's a lot of blaming, shifting blames, people not holding, accepting responsibility for the slackness that they're pushing in this country. And these days, what we have is the politicians, some of them, not all, some of them try not to step on toes. They try not to lose votes because it seems like they have criminal voters supporting them. And for that reason, what they're doing is they don't want to say nothing against criminals because they believe that they're going to lose support. So these things, people, they are actually encouraging La Cosa Nostra in this country. Let me tell you people something. This man, Philip J. Pierre, I remember shortly before the elections, they had a rally in Denver. There were many of these so-called politician people in the Denver Basin and other places that, wow, that rain falling. Hey, there were so many of these politicians that I was asking them, let me interview you and all of that. But they never allowed me to interview them. They were playing games. The only two people who allowed me to interview them was the Minister of Agriculture, Alfred, and Philip J. Pierre. That is why I respect Philip J. Pierre. Because he really answered my questions, but the bad thing about it is my system was not good. I did not have a good speaker. So what happened is, at the end of the day, I had the video but no audio. The audio was very poor because I did not really have a proper mic. But I respect Philip J. Pierre and Alfred from Denver, because whereas all these other politicians I ask, none of them give me a chance to interview them. But Philip J. Pierre and the Minister of Agriculture allowed me to interview them. So because of that, I have respect for Philip J. Pierre personally because of that. And there are certain things that he was standing for earlier on when I started listening to politics that I really appreciated him for. One of the things I remember is Philip J. Pierre was one of the first people I heard, first politicians talking about how we're supposed to kind of focus on using our local produce, manufacturing or producing juice and other things from our local produce. Philip J. Pierre is the first person I heard talking about that. That was when I just started listening to politics. Now, I'm not saying that Philip J. Pierre is the first person who said it, but he's the first person I heard when I just started coming out and following and developing a more keen interest in partisan politics. And so I respect him for these reasons. And so, in relation to the topic, I have one thing to say. Now, there are certain statements that Philip J. Pierre Honorable said that I believe that are very kind of slack statements that he should not have been making. The thing about when people talking about crime, as a prime minister, the people are scared to go to Vieux-Fort because of what is happening. Open shootouts. And then you as a prime minister will say that the people behaving as if the sky is falling. You can't say them kind of things. When you say those things as a prime minister, you're showing people as if you kind of lenient towards crime. You can't talk about them things as a prime minister. And there are some of them who will hear me saying those things and say, look, that man attacking the man. But the thing is, the prime minister need to understand, the people that are around you will not like who will not caution you about these things are not in your favor. Quite possibly, they want you to fail. Quite possibly, there are those around you who may want you not to succeed so that they can take your position. Quite possibly. So that thing about the sky is not falling, it's dangerous, it is reckless. The other thing is about you want to compare St Lucia, the crime in St Lucia to Jamaica. Before I was born, Jamaica was overridden with gun crime. Before I was born. You cannot compare St Lucia crime to Jamaica crime. You compare St Lucia crime to St Vincent crime, even to Barbados crime. You compare Jamaica to Venezuela and those places. Venezuela, Ecuador, and those kind of places. You cannot compare St. Lucia crime to what is going on in Jamaica. You cannot compare. That means it's almost like, it's like you almost say you're not really trying to put a cap on the crime here. It's like you're comparing, you're making a comparison with the worst case scenario. And that kind of mentality from a leader of a country is just going to encourage more slackness among criminals. And these are some of the things that will encourage the formation of La Casa Nostra in the country. And I'm telling, and specifically I'm telling Philip J. Pierre this particular thing out of respect and out of appreciation, because he's the only person, he and the one from the Minister of Agriculture, who allow me to interview them. And out of respect, I'm letting him understand those things. You cannot make those statements. You cannot trivialize crime in the country. We do not know that. So you cannot trivialize these things and make it look like, oi, we ain't nothing yet, man. Look at how all them high figures in Jamaica. There are people, older people, who are from England and those places, and even older people that I know of, who prefer to go to Viewfort to pay their bills, because when they go to Castries, they say like Lucy Lake is too far from Wasco and the other places. So when you go to Viewfort, like the places where you pay your bills are very close to each other. So a lot of older people will go into Viewfort to pay bills. Now because of the shooting thing, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to Viewfort. So you cannot make it look like the people making it look like their roof is falling down. No. It is serious for true. It is very serious. Some people are not going to Viewfort. There are old people who are not going to Viewfort. And that's where they are going and pay their bills. So I hope that they take that with in good faith. Because a lot of times people speak, anytime it has to do with some political figure, they will attack you. You understand? But really, when you look at it, these people, they are not really in favor of some of those people. They are not in favor. Because if you're really in favor of Philip J. Pierre, you will tell him, do not make those kind of statements as it relates to crime. No. So people, I'm telling you, the sky is falling in St. Lucia as it relates to crime. And we're not just talking about shooting. We're talking about little boys who just jump in on people's counters, businessmen counters, and with guns and take people money. You have to create an environment that is conducive to doing business. And the other thing is, there's a mentality that a lot of people have in this country, especially some people that I know of, so-called Malawi people. There's that mentality that they have where if you were to steal from a poor person, that is bad. But if you steal from a more affluent person, there is nothing wrong with that. So maybe these people who jump in over people's counters with guns to take their money, they heard that from their parents, that it is okay if you go and steal some rich man's money. Are you aware that these people who owns these businesses in Castries and all of those places, The main worry for those people is to pay their rent. Some of these places in Castries, the rent is $8,000 a month. Just rent alone. Imagine somebody have a business. They have to generate $8,000 for the month to pay the rent. Then they have to pay the workers, pay utilities, you understand? And restock, take money to restock. And then they themselves, whatever little difference they have, it is theirs. But they believe that the people just have money, just raking money in this country. Business people have it hard too. And the thing is, when these children go to school, they teach them those things, about business. They teach them profit and loss. Even those people who do not do business, who do not study business, they study science or whatever, you still get a chance. Because when you do mathematics, they teach you, there's a section where they teach consumer arithmetic, where if you buy a fridge at $500 and the cash price is this, and versus if you have to take it on hire purchase and pay X amount of money every month, what is the difference you will save and all of that. If you have a business making X amount of money on your expenses, people do these things in maths. They teach children those things. But I do not know. It's like anytime you have a business in St Lucia, people believe it's a big money you have. So it is their right and responsibility to come and steal from you. This mentality has to change. If you do not change that thinking, we're going to have la casa nostra in this country. So, so what happened is, there are certain countries in the Caribbean where people will not invest in business because they know that by investing in business, you put yourself in harm's way. You kind of increase the probability of early death. You increase the chances of being shot if you start a business. In some Caribbean countries, there are certain places in the Caribbean that is how it is. And if it is that we do not stop this thing that is going on there, we are going to have that problem where you will have people with money in this country, but they will just not invest because they do not want to be targets. Again, I'm saying, one more time, if we cannot deal with this crime situation in this country, if we're just going to be talking and doing nothing, if we are going to let our political identity and our political biases prevent us from making the right decisions, disciplining who has to be disciplined, and speaking against what has to be spoken against, we will invite la cosa nostra in this country. We will have a system like the Sicilian Mafia in this country. If we do not address this crime business, people will need to do something. Some of us behave as if we do not know what is happening. It is only when your family members are shot, then you understand, and then you want to take interest in what is going on. It is bad. It is bad. You have a lot of people, young people in this country. They leave secondary school already, some of them 20-something years. And they're behaving like they're on wheelchair, like they're handicapped. They're doing nothing. So when I was working in a certain place. I was working on a certain project. And there are certain places I was shocked. I was shocked. Like Oleon in the valley is one of the places where you have some of the hardest working people and good people in the country. When I was going on certain projects, one time I passed through Oleon. And in high noon, I saw fellas gambling in Oleon. That was shocking to me, young fellas. Another day I was going to Millet. There is a place, there is that road that takes you you take the left one, and I think the name of that place is Kaiko, and the other one take you to Tetshime. I actually had to stop my vehicle in the road because there were guys, around 6 guys, gambling in the road. So I had to stop the vehicle, to allow them time to get off the way, to take off the gambling things, the gambling equipment from the road. And these things are happening in high noon. We have a situation where there's a lot of ladies know that what their sons are doing. Some of them probably they reaping the benefits. And then they come and they cry and they make believe that these were like sins they all along. So in closing, I want to tell you people something. They call this country, they say St. Lucia simply beautiful and all of those things. That is good, that is wonderful. But if it is that we're going to allow this crime thing to go around the place, we're going to not speak when we're supposed to speak. We're going to behave as if we keep quiet, nobody will shoot us, nobody will harm us, and nobody will shoot our children, and everything will be okay. Those that try to protect their lives will lose it. The people, the righteous people who will stand up, God will protect them. The righteous people who will stand up against the crime that is happening in this country, God is going to protect you. Elohim is going to protect you. Jesus the Christ is going to protect you. The righteous people who will stand up against this system that is going on. The righteous people who will stand up against this wickedness, this useless killing, and the enabling of killing in this country. The righteous people who will stand up and say that these things are not right. The righteous people will stand up and say, these women, these men who coming up on television and saying my son was a good boy when they know he used to have 20 laptops in his house and he does not sell laptops. The people who will stand up and speak against those things, God, Elohim, is going to protect you. The people who will stand up and tell Philip J. Pierre, although I respect you, although the fact that you're a prime minister, it is something that, yeah, how are you? That might be remarkable, admirable to see a man of the soil achieve that kind of promotion. In spite of that, the man who will stand up and say, you cannot tell the people that the roof is not falling. The man who will say that you cannot compare Jamaica crime to St. Lucia crime. God is going to protect him. Elohim is going to protect him. So let me tell you people something. This place, this country, I was born in this country. I love this country. God put me in this country. I could have been born any other place, but God allowed it that I was born in this country. And it is my responsibility to raise the alarm, take my trumpet and sound it against wickedness and foolishness in this place. And it is Elohim's responsibility to protect me as I walk through the valley of the shadows of death. I'm afraid of nobody, but I respect all. And I love this country. And I want the best for the people of this country. And I want the best for the leaders of this country too. Keep the fire burning.